Some wounds don't bleed. They just settle quietly, waiting for the perfect silence to hurt you. My name is Marissa. I'm 35 years old, and I live alone in a small but peaceful apartment on the edge of Seattle. I work in design, mostly freelance now, and I've built a life that feels like mine, even if it took longer than I expected to get here. I spend most weekends reading, painting, or walking trails that wind behind my building. It's not loud or impressive, but it's mine, and that has to count for something. I don't really keep in touch with most of my family anymore. We don't fight. We just faded, I guess. Some connections aren't cut with scissors. They're worn thin from silence and misunderstanding, and over time, I stopped trying to patch them up. But last week, out of nowhere, I got a message from my cousin Jenna. She was at a birthday dinner, a casual get-together for my mom, apparently, one I hadn't even been told about. Jenna sent me a picture, no caption, just a group shot. My sister, Allison, was in the center, smiling widely, raising a glass like she was the queen of the table. She always knew how to be the star. I didn't feel much at first, just a twinge. That strange ache when you realize you weren't missed. I was about to close the message when another one came in. This one made me pause. She was telling, "Everyone, you've always been cheap. Said that's why you never come to things. That you hate spending money." People laughed. I stared at those words for a while. Not because I cared what they thought, but because it came from her. Cheap, not cautious, not frugal. Not careful or independent, just cheap. Like all the times I'd helped her, supported her, stayed quiet. None of it mattered. In her eyes, I was the woman with tight fists and no style, not a sister, just a shadow with a budget. It didn't make me angry, not right away. It made me still. That kind of stillness that comes right before something changes. When you realize a line has quietly been crossed, and for once, you won't pretend not to see it. Growing up, Allison was the sun, and I was the satellite. She had this presence, the kind that made people lean in, smile wider, laugh louder. I used to watch her float through family gatherings like she was made for the spotlight. My aunts doted on her, my uncles gave her extra dessert, and my mother, well, she used to beam at Allison like she'd birthed a miracle. I didn't resent it, not at first. I think when you're young, you assume that love just looks different for everyone. Allison came wrapped in praise and applause. Mine came in the form of lists. Be responsible. Be quiet. Don't ask for too much. Save your money. Think ahead. I became the sensible one. The one who packed extra socks for school trips, who remembered to water the plants when everyone else forgot. The one who always brought her library books back on time. No one clapped for those things, but they needed doing, and I got good at being the one who did them. As we got older, the gap between us didn't close, it widened. Allison went through her college years like a whirlwind. She changed majors 3 times, bounced between cities, dated men who treated her like a decoration, and called home only when she needed something. And yet, whenever she stumbled, there was a net waiting. My parents co-signed her student loans. When she crashed her first car, Dad paid the deductible. When she couldn't make rent her junior year, Mom borrowed from my college savings to cover her. I was told it was temporary. I was told, she just needs more help than you do. They weren't wrong. I didn't need help. I had a part-time job by 16, a scholarship by 18, and a budgeting app downloaded by 19. I learned early that if I wanted anything stable, I'd have to be the one to build it. Still, I never turned my back on her. When Allison's credit tanked after missing card payments, I co-signed a lease for her, quietly, without telling our parents. I even covered the security deposit. Later, when she forgot to pay the last month's rent and ghosted the landlord, I stepped in again to avoid legal drama. I paid it off. Silently. I never asked for a thank you. Some part of me, Maybe the child still hoping for balance just wanted to matter to her. There were moments when I thought she saw me. Like the time she broke down after a bad breakup and curled up in my apartment for a week, crying into my secondhand couch. Or when she texted me at 2 a.m. from a hospital waiting room after a panic attack, and I picked her up without asking questions. But those moments passed. Always. Allison was a wave. I was on the shoreline. She came crashing in only when she needed to, and retreated just as fast. Our mother never saw it. She still clung to the story of her daughters, the radiant one and the reliable one. She spoke of Allison like she was still 17, a little reckless maybe, but full of promise. And me? I was the steady hand, the helper, the blessing. But being a blessing is lonely when it just means being useful. And my father. Well, he was quieter. He had this way of disappearing into his paper or behind his phone whenever tension arose. I don't remember him ever choosing a side. Not when Allison slammed doors. Not when Mom played favorites. Not when I sat at the edge of the table, wondering if anyone noticed I hadn't spoken in 20 minutes. That kind of invisibility seeps into your bones. So, I adapted. I became low maintenance, the one who didn't need birthday parties, the one who brought her own lunch to holidays, the one who smiled politely and left early. If I felt hurt, I swallowed it. If I felt forgotten, I told myself it was better than being used. Over the years, I pulled away slowly. Not out of anger, but preservation. And yet, no matter how distant I got, I still hoped, in quiet corners of my mind, that maybe, one day, Allison would see me clearly. Not as a backup plan or a free ride, but as her sister, as someone who chose love, even when it wasn't returned the same way. That's why her words hit me the way they did. Not because she called me cheap, but because even now, after everything, she still couldn't see past the label. She didn't remember the rent I paid, the car ride at midnight, the groceries I left on her porch when she lost her job. All she remembered was that I didn't show up with designer shoes or flashy gifts. So to her, I was just cheap. And that quiet ache, the one I thought had dulled with time, it flared up like it had just been born. It was a small package, wrapped in plain brown paper, tied, with a ribbon I found at the bottom of my craft drawer. Inside was a hand-bound photo journal. I'd spent 2 weeks making it. Printed old family photos, pressed dried flowers between the pages, even copied out little quotes and notes from our childhood cards. It wasn't expensive. It didn't sparkle or beep or connect to Bluetooth. But it was full of memories, real ones, the kind we didn't talk about anymore. It felt like a bridge, even if I wasn't sure she'd want to cross it. Allison's birthday was coming up, and despite the growing distance between us, I thought, maybe this would mean something. Maybe it would remind her of who we used to be, before life pulled us into separate corners. I dropped it off at Mom's house. Allison still used it for mail and packages, and let them know it was from me. I didn't expect a thank you. But I hoped it might at least be acknowledged. 3 days passed. No message. Not even a, got it. Then came Jenna's text. Hey, random. Just wanted to say your gift was so you. She opened it at the table and said, wow, Marissa really outdid herself with this scrapbooking project. Then she laughed and said, she's always been cheap. Everyone cracked up. Cheap. Again. But this time it wasn't behind my back in a quiet conversation. It was loud, public, said with confidence and followed by laughter. I reread the message several times, not sure whether I felt numb or just hollow. I wasn't embarrassed. I wasn't sad. I was done. I sat down on my living room rug, the half-folded laundry still beside me, and tried to name the feeling. It wasn't new. It was something old that had finally surfaced. A kind of grief. Maybe, but sharper, quieter, because it wasn't about a gift. It was about how disposable my kindness had always been in her world. I thought about the job I turned down years ago to help her move across the state, the savings I earned to keep her out of eviction, the times I rearranged my life just so she wouldn't fall apart. All of it, erased, rewritten, mocked, with one word: cheap. I imagined her surrounded by people, smirking, knowing I wouldn't be there to hear it but saying it anyway. That was the part that struck me the most. Not that she'd said it, but she knew she could. Allison had always known where the lines were. She just never thought I'd enforce them. I didn't cry, not this time. Instead, I stood up, folded the laundry in clean, neat stacks, and placed them into drawers. I watered the plants. I made tea. I answered emails. I moved through the day as if nothing had changed, because on the outside, nothing had. But inside, something quietly shifted. I stopped waiting for her to love me the way I loved her. That night, I pulled a journal from my bookshelf, not the fancy kind, just a lined notebook with a soft cover, and began writing everything down. Not out of anger, but clarity. I needed to see it in front of me. Every incident, every pattern, every time I'd been made small so someone else could feel tall. I filled 5 pages without stopping, and by the time I put the pen down, I realized I was ready to let go, not just of her, but of the version of myself who always believed she might change. People show you who they are, over and over, until you stop needing proof, and in that moment, I stopped being her safety net. I started being mine. I was 17 when I first learned how easy it was to become invisible. There was this summer program I'd been dreaming about, a design internship at a local studio downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but for a teenager obsessed with architecture and sketchbooks, it felt like everything. I'd applied in secret, not thinking I'd get in. And when the acceptance letter came, I didn't even tell anyone for 2 days. I just carried it around in my backpack, rereading it every chance I got. It paid a small stipend, enough for books and savings, and more importantly, enough to give me my first taste of real independence. But Allison was going through one of her phases. She'd been dating a guy named Drew, who drove a motorcycle and called her Princess, like it was her name. He dumped her 2 weeks before prom and she crumbled, fully, loudly, and dramatically. She stopped eating. She stayed in bed. She cried so hard it sounded like she was choking. And our mother panicked. She begged me to stay home that summer. Said Allison needed emotional support. Said she couldn't manage both daughters and her job. Said I could always do something next year. She never asked if I wanted to go. She didn't even ask what I was giving up. I remember standing in the hallway while Mom sat on the edge of Allison's bed, stroking her hair and whispering, "Don't worry, baby. Marissa's not going anywhere." She was right. I didn't. Declined the internship. I stayed home. I cooked and cleaned and listened to Allison cry through the walls. I picked up shifts at a bookstore to help cover groceries. I drove her to therapy twice a week, even when she skipped her sessions and lied about it. And when prom rolled around, I helped her pick out a new dress. We sat on the floor of her room, surrounded by sequins and safety pins, and she laughed for the first time in weeks. She told me I was the best sister ever, and then she asked to borrow money. She needed it for heels. She promised to pay me back. She never did. She never mentioned the internship. Never asked what it meant to me. Never even wondered why I'd suddenly become so available, and I let it go. Because back then, love, to me, meant sacrifice. It meant being the one who absorbed the chaos so someone else could stay whole. It meant giving up what I wanted to be, what someone else needed. But I think that was the moment a crack began to form. A quiet one, deep in the core. Because even though I smiled and played along, something inside me whispered, "She doesn't even see you." Not really. Not your dreams. Not your boundaries. Not your worth. She just sees what you can give. And I kept giving. Long past that summer, through college, into adulthood. I kept showing up, fixing things, filling in the gaps. Until one day, there was nothing left of me in the picture. Just a helping hand. A second wallet. A voice on the other end of the phone that always said yes. Remembering that summer now, I don't feel angry. I feel clarified. Because that moment, unspoken choice is the root of everything that followed. The way she looked through me. The way others followed her lead. The way I taught everyone, by example, was that I didn't need to be chosen. I just needed to be useful. Not anymore. That memory isn't just a wound. It's a marker. A before and after. It's the last time I let my silence be mistaken for agreement. There's a kind of peace that comes after you stop needing people to understand you. After Jenna's message and that wave of realization, I didn't rage. I didn't send angry texts or demand apologies. I just disconnected. I stopped returning calls from my mother, not because I hated her, but because I couldn't keep performing for her version of me. I muted the family group chat. I didn't explain. I didn't argue. I just stepped out of the dance, quietly, completely. And as I did, I started noticing how much energy I'd spent being available to people who only noticed me when I wasn't convenient. That silence was healing. I poured myself into work, into small routines that made my space feel like a sanctuary. I cooked more. I read. I even joined a ceramics class where the instructor never asked me to smile or share, just to shape something real with my hands. For the first time in years, I felt solid. And that's when the idea came. Not as a form of revenge, not even as a statement, really, but as a symbol. Allison had always wanted this specific car, a vintage convertible, candy apple red. She used to talk about it like it was her crown jewel. When I make it, I'm getting that car, top down, sunglasses on, music up. She even kept a photo of it taped to her old bedroom mirror. I knew the make and model by heart. She'd described it to me so many times I could picture the stitching on the seats. And one day, on a lunch break, I saw it, a near-perfect match. Just parked at a used luxury dealership outside the city. It was quiet, dusty, tucked between rows of newer, flashier things. But it was hers. Or at least, it had always been in her imagination. I didn't hesitate. I ran the numbers. I could afford it. Years of budgeting, freelancing, saving, they had added up. My car was fine, functional. But this was for me. For the girl who had once traded her dreams for someone else's crisis. For the woman who no longer apologizes for taking up space. When I picked it up the following week, I didn't tell anyone. No selfies, no captions, no updates. It was just mine. And then, a few Saturdays later, I found myself near the old neighborhood. Purely by chance at first. But then, maybe not, I saw them before they saw me. Allison was out front with a few friends, standing by the driveway, holding an iced coffee like it was part of her identity. Her voice carried, it always had, and I could hear her laughing, talking, about some future project, some big plans coming soon. I pulled up to the intersection just a few feet away. I didn't rev the engine. I didn't honk. I didn't even slow down for effect. I just drove, top down. Sunglasses on. Quiet music is playing low. A breeze through my hair and nothing in my heart but stillness. As I passed, I looked over, just once. And there she was, mid-sentence, mid-laugh, frozen. Our eyes met for half a second, and I saw it happen. The realization, the disbelief. The memory of every time she'd scoffed at my simplicity, called me cheap, rolled her eyes at my quiet strength, All of it shattered in that one glance. Because there, in front of her friends, in full daylight, I was everything she said. I wasn't. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just passed through, like a ghost of the sister she could have known if she'd ever looked close enough. And that somehow said more than any confrontation ever could. Because the truth is, I wasn't trying to impress her. I wasn't trying to win. I was showing myself what freedom looked like. It's been a few months since that day. The car sits quietly in my garage now. Not a trophy, not a statement, just a reminder, a symbol of something simple. I can give myself what no one else ever offered me: recognition, respect, and peace. People keep asking why I chose that model. Why that color? And I just smile. They think it's about taste. They don't know it's about truth. My phone has stayed quiet. No text from Allison. No surprise apology. No message layered in sarcasm, trying to smooth it over. Nothing from my mother either, though she did leave me a voicemail a while ago. Something about the family getting together soon. How it would be nice if we were all in one place again. I never called back. I didn't need to, because for once, I'm not measuring my life against silence or absence. I'm building it, brick by steady brick, around the things I actually want. I've started saying yes more to myself. To long walks at sunset. To say no without guilt. To weekends where I do absolutely nothing and feel no shame about it. I've even reached out to a few old friends I'd drifted from, not because I needed to explain anything, but because I wanted to reconnect without the weight I used to carry. There's something sacred about choosing your own peace, about not needing permission to feel good. Some mornings, I still think about her, in passing, like you think of an old photograph you haven't looked at in years. I wonder if she remembers what she said. I wonder if she tells it differently now, if she still makes jokes about me in rooms I'll never walk into. But then I remember, it doesn't matter. I'm not here to rewrite her version. I'm here to live mine. The one where I am enough, without decoration, without applause, without sacrifice. I used to believe that I had to earn my place in the world by proving I wasn't a burden, by being quiet, helpful, and accommodating. I thought that if I just did enough, eventually someone, anyone, would look at me and say, "You were worth it." But now I know. I was worth it the whole time. I just had to stop waiting to be seen and start seeing myself. I don't know if Allison will ever understand, or if she'll ever try. But the truth is, I don't need her to. Some things don't get resolved with apologies or closure. Some things heal in the quiet, in the boundary, in the life that continues, even when the past doesn't follow you in. So no, I didn't buy that car to hurt her. I bought it to remind myself I could. I didn't drive by to make her feel small. I drove by to remind myself I wasn't anymore. That's all it ever was. And that's more than enough.